Okay, let's get into this. Have you ever just stopped and wondered why, with all the amazing medical advances we have, so many of us are still dealing with these frustrating health issues?
Yeah, things that just don't seem to have a clear explanation.
Exactly. Like allergies popping up out of nowhere, or that deep fatigue sleep doesn't touch, gut problems, aches and pains.
Right, the kind of stuff where doctors often struggle to pinpoint a single cause. Why is it so common?
It's a question that, well, it leads us down a pretty interesting path today. Maybe a little unsettling for some.
Unsettling is definitely one word for it.
Yeah, we're diving into a really unique source here. It's a book by Dr. Nikolai V. Gubarev and Professor Alex A. Volinsky. And this isn't your standard medical book at all.
No, not really. It takes a very, very specific look, maybe even controversial, at what they think might be the real root causes, these overlooked causes behind so many of those common, kind of mysterious conditions you mentioned.
hmm And their main idea, which is really what our deep dive is all about today, is digging into their argument. They're saying a huge, often ignored factor in our health is parasites,
Hmm.
specifically worms.
But they take it even further, don't they?
They really do. They introduce something they claim is totally new, an unclassified type of organism they believe might be living inside. Well, most people.
Wow. Okay. And they sort of set the tone right away, don't they? With that biblical quote at the start.
Yeah, he grabs you. They reference Mark 5.
My name is Legion, for we are many.
Right. And the authors use that metaphorically, suggesting it speaks to this huge number of microbes inside us, viruses, bacteria, and, yeah, potentially parasites.
It definitely primes you for their perspective, sort of sets the stage for this idea of unseen multitudes within.
It absolutely does. So, okay, let's start with how they frame their basic idea, their critique of modern medicine. That's kind of their launch pad.
Right. They kick off by pointing out exactly what you said earlier. Despite all the advanced healthcare, especially in developed countries, a lot of people just aren't truly healthy. They point to how widespread illness is. Things like allergies, chronic fatigue, gut issues, asthma, even blood disorders, mental health stuff, where the origins are often murky.
And they don't pull punches with their critique. They argue society's kind of conditioned us to be passive. We just expect doctors to fix us.
Yeah, like consumers of health rather than active participants. And they suggest doctors, maybe because of pressures or limitations, often end up just treating symptoms with drugs.
Instead of digging for the real root cause.
Exactly. And they point to advertising, pushing drugs like magic bullets, often glossing over potentially serious side effects.
They even bring up the placebo effect.
Yeah, as strong evidence that our bodies actually can heal themselves, which makes you wonder if focusing on natural processes might be more effective than just symptom suppression.
And this leads them back to what they see as this massive blind spot in medicine.
Parasites. Yeah, they argue doctors just aren't vigilant enough about them.
They call them a universal invisible threat.
The hidden hand, maybe, behind a lot of diseases, or at least making them worse. They think there's this mistaken belief that serious parasites are rare in places like the US or Europe.
So people don't talk about it, doctors don't look for it.
Right. And they suggest maybe medical training plays a part. Parasitology might be just a small section, leaving doctors, well, maybe underinformed.
Although it's interesting, they do mention that some doctors have actually experimented with using parasites carefully for things like IBS. Kind of a paradox.
It is. So the authors state their goal really clearly. This book is educational, an independent perspective to help people understand this potential threat, take charge of their own health.
Knowledge is power, essentially.
Informed is warned, warned is armed. That's their view.
Now, this is super important to clarify, and they say it themselves in the book, their backgrounds.
Yes, very important. They are engineers, they have PhDs, but in engineering fields.
Not medicine, not biology.
Right. They're very upfront about it. They state clearly they aren't formally trained in life sciences. They did consult experts, but they emphasize they do not have definitive scientific proof that the organisms they describe, especially the new ones, are parasites in the way science currently understands them.
Okay, so it's their investigation, their observations, their hypothesis, but not established science.
Exactly. They're clear on that limitation. And they do put it in the context of the microbiome, how our bodies are ecosystems. Way more microbial cells than human cells, viruses, bacteria, and yes, potentially parasites, all playing a role in our health, especially immunity.
And within that context, how do they define a parasite?
As a forced coexistence where the parasite gets almost all the benefit, usually at the host's expense, often significantly so.
And their main focus in this book is helminths. parasitic worms.
Yes, and they directly challenge that idea that you only get these in poor countries or from bad sanitation. They argue nobody is truly immune. And they believe more open-minded people, including some doctors, are starting to come around to this idea.
Mm. And the book structure reflects this, dealing with known worms first, then the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. Part 1 looks at recognized helminths, but through their particular lens. Then Part 2 dives into the lesser known, and then the really controversial part, the unclassified ones they claim to have found.
They mentioned the WHO considers parasitic diseases a major global threat.
Right. Among the top 6 infectious threats. And there's no magic bullet cure. Treatment is very specific to the type of worm.
And their big, perhaps unsettling conclusion from all this
is that nearly everyone might be a carrier. It's about facing up to what you might be hosting inside you, giving them warmth, food, shelter.
And in return, you're dealing with their waste products.
Exactly. It's a stark image they paint. As they put it, if we don't declare war on our enemies, they may already be waging one against us.
Wow. Okay. So let's touch on some of the known helminths they discussed through their lens. They keep the categories simple, right?
Yeah, basically roundworms, nematodes, and flatworms, which includes tapeworms, cestodes, and flukes, trematodes. They say helminths can live almost anywhere, but they focus mostly on the gut because that's the main entry point through ingestion, especially in colder places.
And they explain the whole host thing. Intermediate, final.
Right. Intermediate hosts for the larval stages, final hosts where they mature and cause problems. Sometimes one host does the whole job.
And when they talk about specific worms, like ascarids, the roundworms, they emphasize certain characteristics.
Yeah, less about the tiny anatomical details and more about things like how they move. Ascarids are called wandering because they can travel outside the gut to the liver, lungs, how tough they are. They describe this strong outer layer, how they can anchor themselves and even move against the flow in your intestines to avoid being flushed out.
And their reproduction is, well, mind-boggling.
Insane, yeah. A single female laying over 250,000 eggs a day. And those eggs are incredibly resilient. They can survive freezing temperatures, last for years in the soil.
Which means contamination of soil, food, water is a big route of transmission.
Exactly. Especially with poor sanitation. It gets on shoes, comes inside as dust, contaminates fruits and veggies if they're not washed well.
And their advice from this is pretty direct.
Very direct. Don't swallow phlegm or mucus. They suggest it could potentially reintroduce eggs and keep the cycle going inside you.
They also cover whipworms, living in the large intestine.
Yeah, and how they embed themselves in the gut wall. The authors link this to releasing toxins that could cause digestive upset, pain, maybe even contribute to ulcers.
Then there's trichina, the one from undercooked meat, especially pork.
Right. And the really concerning thing they highlight here is that the larvae don't just stay in the gut. They travel and form cysts in your muscles.
Which they connect to symptoms like severe muscle pain, high fever, even neurological issues. They see it as the body reacting to these migrating larvae and their toxic waste.
They also briefly mention others, like hookworms, more common in warmer areas, linking them strongly to anemia because they damage the gut wall and feed on blood.
And dwarf threadworms. Those sound particularly nasty.
Yeah, because of autoinfection. They can complete their whole life cycle inside you, meaning the infection can just keep escalating. And they can burrow deep into tissues, making them, according to the authors, very difficult to treat.
Okay, then shifting to flatworms, like tapeworms.
Right. Ribbon-like segmented bodies, no digestive system of their own. They just absorb nutrients through their skin using hooks or suckers to hang on.
The broadfish tapeworm is a major example they use. You get it from raw or undercooked fish.
Yeah, and they emphasize its potential size up to 10 meters. That alone can cause problems like blockages. But they also link it strongly to nutrient deficiencies, especially B12, leading to anemia, plus a whole range of vague symptoms.
Including that creepy feeling of something moving inside.
Exactly. Which can apparently sometimes lead to psychiatric referrals if the real cause isn't suspected.
And then the cat's liver fluke, also from undercooked fish in certain areas.
Yes, Opisthorchis. This is a fluke, but they discuss it here. They highlight its long lifespan over 10 years and the serious damage it can do to the bile ducts, gallbladder, liver, pancreas. They linked it to inflammation, cirrhosis, even potentially liver and pancreatic cancer.
And crucially, freezing doesn't kill this one.
Right. Needs thorough cooking, boiling for 20 minutes, proper frying. Cold smoking isn't enough, a key point for prevention.
They also mention lung flukes from crustaceans.
Causing respiratory symptoms, sometimes migrating elsewhere, and blood flukes from contaminated water causing swimmers itch when they penetrate the skin.
So pulling back from the specific examples of known worms, the author's main point seems to be
That these things are likely far more common than we think. They're insidious, they cause a huge variety of symptoms that mimic other conditions, and they often get missed by standard medical checks.
which sets the stage perfectly for the next part of their argument, doesn't it? If we're missing the known ones.
What about the unknown ones? Exactly. But before they introduce their big claim, they kind of summarize the general challenges with parasites.
Right. They reiterate the link to diet raw, undercooked food, and the need for thorough washing, especially for kids.
And they emphasize parasite characteristics. They're tenacious, reproduce massively, switch hosts, use sexual reproduction to adapt, and a really key point they make. Parasites actively suppress the host's immune system.
Making you more vulnerable to other infections.
Precisely, bacteria, viruses. And it's not just the living worm that's the problem.
Ah, yes. The toxins released when they die inside you.
Right. That can get into your bloodstream, causing intoxication. Plus, the physical damage they do moving around creates pathways for secondary infections.
And they bring up allergies again here.
Yeah, suggesting helminths can really mess with allergy testing. They might bind the antibodies, either hiding real allergies or creating false positives, leads to misdiagnosis, ineffective treatment. It's a mess, potentially.
Which reinforces their point about asymptomatic carriers spreading parasites unknowingly.
And physicians often not suspecting them, limited training, unreliable standard tests like fecal exams. They paint a picture of a system not really equipped to catch these things effectively. They even mention a shortage of parasitologists and some good meds being pulled off the market.
Here they get a bit philosophical, yeah.
They do. They question our understanding of cause and effect in disease. Like, is the virus or parasite the root cause, or is it just taking advantage of a weakened system? They use examples like maybe eyeglasses weaken eye muscles over time, or metal fillings attract certain bacteria.
Interesting analogies. It's about shifting perspective. And they actually offer some reassurance amidst all this.
Yeah, they say, look, don't panic. They believe having parasites is probably natural, almost universal. The really deep question they pose is, are parasites the cause of illness, or are they the result? Meaning, maybe they thrive because our internal environment is off. Poor diet, unhealthy lifestyle, maybe even negative thinking patterns could create conditions where they flourish. It comes back to that legion idea, the complex ecosystem inside us.
So just taking medication to kill them isn't the whole solution, in their view.
Not at all. It might get rid of one type, but if you don't change that internal environment, your lifestyle, diet, maybe even your mindset, you haven't fixed the underlying issue. You're still a welcoming host.
Okay. And that leads us directly into the most fascinating and definitely the most controversial part of their book, the unclassified organisms.
This is the core of their unique claim. They state they've encountered a type of organism they believe is completely new to science, a neohelminth. They give it a provisional name. Seaweed ropeworms. Homofunis vermis.
And crucially, these are not recognized by current science or medicine.
Not at all. They are very clear about that.
But they do try to connect it to things doctors do see.
Yes. They point out that during colonoscopies, doctors often see weird structures, sometimes called lymphoid aggregates or mucosal folds, polyps. Standard explanations exist. But the authors ask, what if they're actually these ropeworms? Just because something's there doesn't mean it's supposed to be.
And they know this sounds out there.
Absolutely. They directly address the skepticism. They say, look, history is full of ideas that seemed crazy at first. Flat Earth, doctors resisting hand washing, the idea that bacteria caused ulcers. Science evolves. They argue this area deserves an open mind, even if it feels uncomfortable.
They even share how they got started on this path.
Yeah, the second author, Professor Valinsky, apparently saw these things himself during a water fast. He initially thought he might be delusional, but it sparked his research. He then connected with Dr. Gubarev, the first author, who had apparently been working on similar ideas and methods since the late 90s.
And they claim they're not alone in seeing this.
They report that after sharing their findings online, many others came forward. They claim about 80% of people using their methods reported expelling similar structures. They mention online forums in Russia with thousands of documented cases, people sharing photos of what they believe are these expelled worms.
Wow. They published papers in 2013, gave them the name. But what's their official stance now, as of the book's writing?
This is really key. They state their data is inconclusive. They explicitly say they cannot state with scientific certainty that these ropeworms are parasites.
So what could they be, according to them?
They throw out possibilities. Maybe part of the normal microbiome. Maybe some weird immune system product. Maybe, and this is really out there, a different form of life entirely. Maybe even extraterrestrial. The point is, they don't know for sure.
And that's why they call for more research.
Exactly. They stress the need for proper scientific investigation. They are presenting their observations, their hypothesis, but acknowledge it's not validated science yet.
So their goal with this part of the book
Is to share the information, raise awareness, spark curiosity among doctors, scientists, and just regular people interested in their health. To convince readers these things exist and, based on their anecdotal evidence, that a majority might have them. That's the unsettling potential truth they present. And they add that many users report feeling much better after expelling them.
Okay, let's dig into their description of these seaweed ropeworms and the problems they associate with them, based purely on what's in the source.
The name comes from the appearance after expulsion. People describe them looking like seaweed, twisted into ropes, sometimes layered.
And they don't survive long outside the body.
Right. They say they perish and dry out in the air, which makes them hard to photograph well, and might explain why standard tests miss them if they disintegrate quickly.
They anticipate a range of reactions to this information.
Yeah, curiosity, anxiety, fear, maybe just shrugging it off. They see it as their duty to share, especially for people failed by conventional medicine.
What about the characteristics of the mature ones they describe?
Well, based on what they've observed, they lack typical movement organs like roundworms. No obvious way they secrete things, circulate fluids, or reproduce. They speculate maybe it happens through the body surface or internal channels. A unique adaptation, they think. No sensory organs, no nervous system visible. Again, they see this as adaptation, not breakdown.
They describe a head.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes, when present, they describe 4 spikes and 2 oval suckers near the top or mouth area. They even speculate color differences might indicate male or female.
And the body itself.
Unsegmented, kind of bumpy. It can apparently contract and expand quite a bit, changing diameter from maybe 0.3 up to 4 centimeters. Length varies hugely, from 1 centimeter up to a meter, depending on the host environment. Jelly-like, single-layer skin, usually whitish to pale yellow-orange, but can get darker if it absorbs things like heavy metals.
And those internal channels sound crucial.
Yeah, the body's full of them. The authors think they're used to absorb waste, move nutrients around, maybe even absorb host blood.
Where do they supposedly live?
The main body, with the head, is typically in the colon, they believe. But detached segments, which they call daughter worms, can apparently survive and grow on their own, even without a head.
How do those attach?
They describe a sucker at the front end looks like a bubble when young, more like a clod of slime when mature. It sticks to the gut wall. They think there might be smaller suckers along the body, too. And the number of these ropes can vary, maybe 1 to 20 per person. They also mention seeing these small, hemisphere-shaped suckers in early stages, passing through strainers during cleansing. They see these as the foundation for growth, noting they don't burst easily and seem to expand as the worm grows.
And the life cycle is all internal, no leaving the body.
That's their hypothesis. All stages happen inside one human. No intermediate hosts needed, probably no distinct larval stage outside the body. They could potentially live as long as the host does.
Feeding mainly on gut contents.
Yeah, absorbed through the body surface, helped by those internal channels. They describe it as an inactive lifestyle since food is always available.
But detecting them is the big hurdle.
Huge hurdle, according to the authors. They're masters of disguise, looking just like fecal matter. Standard stool tests would completely miss them. It takes, they say, a really observant person doing unpleasant work to spot them. Took them years.
And regular parasite treatments don't work on these.
That's their claim. Methods for known worms. Useless, they say. These things apparently don't react or move when you try standard treatments. You have to actively look for them during cleansing procedures.
They even have stages of development they describe.
Right, based on how they look. Stage 1, jelly worms, amorphous. Stage 2, seaweed worms with bubbles. Stage 3, bushworms, branched. Stages 4 and 5 are the mature ropeworms.
Okay, so if they don't have big hooks like tapeworms, how do they stay put in the gut? That seems key.
They propose some really unique mechanisms. First, the way they twist and weave together into ropes or spirals like a corkscrew, that provides a strong anchor. Second, they can apparently curl up and swell, physically blocking parts of the intestine, trapping food. They might even squeeze the contents to make a juice they can absorb. Large numbers create areas of influence.
So the physical structure helps resist being pushed out.
Yes. And get this, they also claim the worms emit gas bubbles through their channels, which propels them against the flow of waste, like little jets helping them stay put.
Wow. Okay. And their size helps too.
Once they get big enough, yeah. And finally, they secrete this sticky, acrid slime. It acts like glue, sticking them to the gut lining, protecting them from digestive juices, and maybe even shielding them from the immune system.
Okay, let's talk about the dangers. What kind of symptoms do the authors link specifically to these ropeworms?
They suggest the worms aim for long-term survival, hiding at first. They use the host's resources, leave behind waste. Symptoms are often subtle initially, like just feeling tired for no reason. It's different from an acute infection, more insidious. And because food is always there and the life cycle is all internal, they claim these things can grow very large and numerous over time, leading to increasing harm, a wide range of symptoms mimicking chronic poisoning, often hitting the body's weakest spots.
Like physical blockage.
Yeah, big ones can block the intestines or bile ducts, causing chronic constipation.
And the bloating and gas.
They say the worms fill up with gas bubbles, causing bloating, meteorism, loud gurgling, maybe even visible movement under the skin. They think it contributes to that pot-belly look some people get.
Can this pressure affect nearby organs?
That's their claim. The gas and physical bulk can compress organs, blood vessels, potentially leading to blood pressure swings, cardiovascular problems, poor circulation, making vital organs like kidneys, heart, brain, eyes vulnerable.
What about when they die inside?
They apparently stay attached. As they decay, they release a flood of toxins, leading to ongoing intoxication, exhaustion, just feeling chronically unwell.
And the toxins irritate the gut lining too.
Yes, causing inflammation, colitis, ulcers. Diarrhea might be the body trying to flush toxins out, often with slime, can alternate with constipation.
They link a lot of pain to them as well.
Colicky abdominal pain from the gas, often mistaken for ulcers or gastritis because parasites aren't suspected. They also suggest migrating larvae might cause aches in the limbs, back, chest mistaken for things like sciatica.
And hernias. Genitourinary problems.
Yeah, the pressure from gas can cause protrusions, umbilical or inguinal hernias. Pressure on the bladder or urethra might contribute to prostate issues or other urinary problems, they suggest.
And they steal nutrients.
That's the argument. They intercept nutrients from your food and supplements, leaving you the crumbs. Might make you eat more unconsciously, leading to weight gain, plus the weight of the worms themselves.
The effects vary a lot between people.
Heavily depends on the host age, health, immune system status. Weaker people suffer more, they claim.
How do they avoid the immune system, supposedly?
Being in the gut helps them avoid the main immune patrols in the blood and lymph. Plus, that slime they secrete might act as a shield.
They even connect them to breathing problems.
Yeah, they claim the slime can travel upwards into the lungs and airways, leading to constant mucus, chronic coughs, runny noses, frequent colds.
And sleep disruption, nervous system effects.
They suggest the worms are most active early morning, 2 to 6 a.m., feeding, swelling, making noise, gas, disrupting sleep, and their waste products irritate the nervous system, maybe causing anxiety, irritability, mood swings, social phobias.
Even cognitive function might be affected.
They believe the toxic load can impair attention, reaction time, decision-making, could be a hidden factor in human error accidents, they speculate.
So they tie this all back to these vague, chronic diseases that are hard to treat.
Exactly. Chronic digestion issues, constipation, bloating, allergies, fatigue. They think these worms could be the underlying cause, skillfully masking their presence. They even list things like foul breath, skin problems, hair loss. It's a confusing picture of local and systemic problems.
And they hint at a cancer link.
They mention that some scientists suspect parasites might trigger certain cancers, and that aligns with their view on the long-term damage these things could cause.
Plus, direct tissue damage from pressure.
Right, leading to localized tissue death or atrophy.
Okay, so if standard tests are useless, according to them, how do you even know if you have these?
You don't, not through conventional diagnosis. Lab tests fail, they blend in with feces. No recognized detection methods exist, which leads to their really controversial conclusion.
That detection is pointless because everyone has them.
That's their claim. They believe the only way to verify is to expel them using specific methods.
Meaning people could have them and feel fine, or have vague symptoms.
Yes. They can be hidden, especially early stages. Headaches, fatigue, easily ignored or blamed on something else. The immune system might keep them in check for a while, but maybe not forever.
So if you buy into their premise and conventional medicine offers no answers, they provide their own solutions.
Exactly. That's the next step in their book. They reiterate, everyone has them. Many health problems might stem from them. Normal immunity and treatments don't work. So don't bother asking doctors for tests that don't exist. Focus on expulsion to see for yourself and hopefully feel better.
And these methods are proprietary, developed over years.
Yes, they say they've been working on them since 1998, patented in Russia. They describe them as carefully designed, tested through their own work and user feedback. There's even a story about eucalyptus steam curing a cold, leading to its use against these worms.
And just to be clear, remedies for known parasites won't work on these.
That's what they insist. You need a completely different approach, designed specifically for these hypothesized rope worms.
Okay, so what kind of methods are we talking about? A lot seem to involve enemas.
Yes, enemas are central, using specific ingredients they believe target the worms in the lower gut. Things like eucalyptus, messmate, oil or leaves, lemon juice, sea buckthorn oil, baking soda, even salt, often mixed with water or milk.
And they have theories about why these work.
Based on their observations, yes. Eucalyptus oils might penetrate and relax the worms, help detach them, dissolve mucus. Lemon juice might also penetrate tissues, help detach. Baking soda and salts, they claim, have a fatal effect, relaxing and destroying them, making the environment hostile, dissolving mucus. They even think milk reduces worm activity and can be used as a diagnostic test via enema.
Are there non-enema methods mentioned too?
They allude to some. Specific products like Kankura tea, Citrax tablets used with things like red wine. They also suggest dietary changes,
let's get into
cultured
this.
milk, bitter veggies, juices might help suppress activity or reduce toxicity.
And it's not just a one-off treatment. It's a system.
Yeah, typically a month-long plan, alternating different methods depending on how bad they think the infestation is. Interestingly, they found the later stage, ropeworms, were often easier to get out first, while the earlier jelly seaweed bush stages were tougher.
They even give detailed instructions for the enema technique, including that bath trick.
They do. They see the enema as vital. They describe, using the standard Esmarch bag, specific water temperatures, how to position yourself. And yes, that unique trick, doing the enema in a warm bath. They claim Archimedes' principle makes the water flow in easily, painlessly, allowing the full dose. They encourage people to be inventive and brave.
Okay, let's wrap up with their final thoughts, their epilogue.
They basically reiterate that we're just scratching the surface of understanding these ropeworms, but based on their work, they believe they're widespread, even in kids, and could be behind countless health issues.
They say people using their methods report amazing results.
Yes, seeing long-term conditions improve or disappear. They stress that persistence and enthusiasm are crucial for success.
And they feel validated by seeing similar stuff online.
People independently sharing photos of things expelled during cleanses that the authors believe are mature ropeworms. Similar structures, features. They see it as the ice is broken, proof that others are seeing it too.
So their final message is,
prepare yourself for what you might see if you try their methods and take action. Be persistent, be passionate. They contrast this with doctors who might just shrug or suggest psychiatry because they don't recognize these things. Their point is, act purposefully while the scientists are still, as they put it, thinking.
wow, okay, this has definitely been a deep dive into some really provocative material. We've covered the author's critique of medicine, their argument about overlooked known parasites, and then this huge leap into the unclassified seaweed ropeworms.
Yeah, their descriptions, the dangers they attribute to them, their very unconventional removal methods. It's a lot. We've also noted their own caveats, the lack of scientific proof for the ropeworms, their engineering background driving this, their call for more research.
But at the same time, they present this compelling, if unproven, narrative that many chronic health issues could be linked to these things they describe.
It really forces you to question things, doesn't it? That core question they raise. Are parasites the cause or the result of illness?
Or maybe, as they suggest, the real answer lies in changing your whole internal environment, lifestyle, diet, mindset, becoming less hospitable territory, which is a much bigger idea than just getting rid of worms.
Absolutely. It leaves you with so much to think about.
Yeah.
Could something so fundamental be so overlooked? Does understanding it require stepping outside the usual scientific box like the authors did? It's definitely a challenging thought to chew on long after we finish talking.